Mr. Carney's well-crafted and eloquently delivered speech at Davos has been widely noted, and I want to start by offering my own praise. The Prime Minister is right to restate what many have said for years. Canada must become more self-reliant, less dependent, and work with like-minded countries to advance our interests. And Conservatives are, as always, willing to work with him to turn these words into results. What stood out most to me was when he pointed out, quote, the gaps between rhetoric and reality. That's especially true here at home. If liberal words and good intentions were tradable commodities, Canada would already be the richest nation on earth. Unfortunately, after a decade of promises and grand speeches, liberals have made our economy costly and dependent, more so than ever. After nearly a year as Prime Minister, Mark Carney has made things only worse. The deficit has doubled, food inflation is double that in the States, housing costs have also doubled, the worst in the G7, and no pipelines are approved, anti-development laws removed. The military has a massive recruiting and equipment shortfall. There's still no free trade between provinces, no crime laws have been passed, and the Prime Minister's signature promise of negotiating a win with the U.S. is unfulfilled. Indeed, U.S. tariffs have more than doubled on Canada, while Mr. Carney's promised counter tariffs have vanished along with his elbows. Those unkept promises, which followed grand speeches and announcements, make us especially vulnerable to the world's dangers. We've had enough words. Now we need results. Now we need to unblock our resources. Now we must approve pipelines. Now we must bolster our military to protect our soil, sea, and skies. Now we need to crack down on foreign interference, threats, and intimidation of our people from hostile powers like China, Russia, and Iran. The last 5 years have shown us that we can't count on others. Our closest neighbor and largest trading partner, the United States, struck us with tariffs and questioned our sovereignty. Now that is short-sighted, and I believe it will hurt them too. But we can't control what they do, and no one can control what President Trump does or says. I know it's tempting to say our relationship with America is over forever. But here's the reality. We still live next door to the biggest economy and military the world has ever seen. We sell 20 times more to the U.S. than we do to China. 1 in 10 Canadian jobs rely directly or indirectly on trade with America. We owe it to those workers, our friends, family, and fellow Canadians to ensure those jobs don't go away. Growing and diversifying our economy is essential, as all political parties have been saying for decades. But we must also remember that our trade and security partnership with the U.S. is centuries old and will outlast one president. To quote the British Liberal Prime Minister, Lord Palmerston, we have no eternal allies and we have no perpetual enemies. Our interests are eternal and perpetual, and those interests it is our duty to follow. We should continue to work with allies within the U.S. that are outside the administration to minimize the damage until a larger relationship repair can be completed. And I restate once again my offer to the Prime Minister that Conservatives stand ready to help his government fight U.S. tariffs. But while we hope for the best, it would be naive to assume that things will go back to exactly what they were. Whether the next administration is Republican or Democrat, tariffs may be here for the foreseeable future. None of that, though, is an excuse for letting our guard down and repeating past mistakes by making Canada even more vulnerable to aggressive powers like the People's Republic of China, which the Prime Minister himself called our greatest threat only a few months ago. It was with great irony that the Prime Minister quoted one of the greatest heroes of the 20th century fight against totalitarian communism, Václav Havel, less than a week after launching a, quote, strategic partnership for a new world order with the Chinese Communist regime, a partnership that includes plans to deepen engagement on national security issues at a senior level. We cannot throw caution to the wind with a regime that kidnaps our citizens, steals our technology, interferes in our elections, sets up illegal police stations on our soil, and has a history of using trade as a tool for diplomatic warfare against us. If this is what the Prime Minister meant when he told the Davos crowd that he is calibrating our relationships so their depth reflects our values, then I seriously question his values and, frankly, his judgment. Of course, we have to trade with China, as we always have, but without losing our compass or our national security. At the same time, we must continue the work of Stephen Harper, the Prime Minister who expanded our network of trade with more like-minded middle-power countries. It's not a new idea. In fact, we already have free trade with most of the middle powers that the Prime Minister recognized in his Davos speech after the previous Conservative government negotiated agreements with a record 46 countries. Given that we already have these agreements in place, what stops us from growing trade with those countries is not their trade barriers on us, but our trade barriers on ourselves. Liberal laws like C-69 and C-48 make it impossible to approve projects or ship energy to other countries on different coasts. It takes 19 years to approve a mine in Canada. The Liberal government has created these laws and obstacles, and almost a year after taking office, Mr. Carney has not removed a single law or bureaucracy, or approved a single pipeline, or removed the industrial carbon tax, which drives food and housing costs up and industry out. There are hundreds of billions of private dollars looking to invest in wildly profitable projects like a pipeline to the Pacific. Money to get Canada's energy flowing and Canada's workers working. We have the resources under our feet. The only thing missing is permits, the federal permits from the Carney government, which are still among the slowest in the world. Grand announcements, new government agencies, signing ceremonies, red carpets, and stacking new laws and bureaucracies on top of old ones will do nothing. There's no magic to this. What we need is for the Carney government to get out of the way and approve these privately funded projects. Mr. Carney told the crowd in Davos that, quote, a country that cannot feed itself, fuel itself, or defend itself has few options. So why can't we? Just this week, Canada was declared the food inflation capital of the G7. And last year, Canadians who can't feed themselves made a record 2 million visits to a food bank every single month, more than double than the number from 7 years ago. In a country with almost endless farming potential. We have the potential to be the most affordable and the richest country in the world because we have the most land, resources, and coastline. We need to unblock our potential, stop stopping, and start starting. That's why Conservatives propose the Canadian Sovereignty Act. It's a detailed plan to unlock and unblock Canada's potential and make our country more affordable, self-reliant, and sovereign. It aims to bring home the $500 billion of investment that's been driven to the U.S. over the last decade, with practical steps like ending capital gains tax on reinvestments in Canada, which would be economic rocket fuel for business startups, high-tech inventions, and massive money-making, job-creating projects, repealing anti-pipeline and anti-development laws to legalize fast and safe approval of pipelines and shipping energy to our East Coast, including a new pipeline to the Pacific, which would ship 1 million barrels a day and $30 billion a year, the single biggest increase in our exports overseas. Let's go from having the second slowest permits in the OECD to the fastest. Let's end the industrial carbon tax on industry and farmers so that they can more affordably produce what we need. Let's create free trade bonuses for provinces and territories to open up their markets to fellow Canadians, tear down internal barriers, and strengthen national economic unity. We need new rules and tax incentives preventing Canadian technologies, intellectual property, and strategic assets from being sold to hostile foreign states and state-influenced interests. We need to cut taxes on work, investment, home building, and energy so that we can make more with less. Doing so will make us both autonomous and affordable. The more food we grow, the more energy we supply ourselves, the more we will be able to afford, the stronger our dollar will be, and the more purchasing power our families will enjoy. That's why I'm announcing today that next week, we Conservatives will introduce a motion in Canada's Parliament to pass the Canadian Sovereignty Act. Speaking about sovereignty, we need a strong and sovereign national defense. And what we do on defense is something that we control alone. We don't have to ask anybody's permission to have a strong, state-of-the-art military and defend ourselves. But could we really defend ourselves today? Once again, Mr. Carney has talked a big game about building up our armed forces, but after nearly a year as Prime Minister, he hasn't even begun to deliver. It's been pushing promises down the road, smoke and mirror budgeting, and commitments of things he might one day do. Just trust us. We really want to do it, just not yet. Look, we all support the sovereignty of Greenland and Denmark, but we must be able to support our own Arctic sovereignty. Right now, we only have 300 full-time members of the military stationed in the Arctic, in a territory that is larger than most countries. We have the largest coastline in the world, and yet we have just a regular naval force of 8,400 personnel. A sovereign country must be able to defend its people and its territory. Conservatives have a detailed plan to restore our armed forces and our great martial tradition, to fix our recruitment crisis and expand regular force and reserve force dramatically and immediately, increase recruitment and promotions by driving merit and not political correctness, reestablishing a permanent military presence in the Arctic with CFB Iqaluit, a new Arctic naval base, and upgrade Inuvik to full base status for fighters and tankers, to back sovereignty with real hardware by requiring 4 new icebreakers, including AWACS aircraft, to detect threats to our Arctic skies, to fast-track upgrades to submarines, helicopters, northern hubs, to strengthen boots-on-the-ground presence by doubling the Canadian Rangers and creating an Army Reserve unit in Whitehorse. So far, Mr. Carney, in this regard and in every other, has been very fortunate to be judged by his rhetoric and his stated intentions rather than by his results, because nearly a year into his term, the rhetoric has changed, but the reality is not. The illusion of purpose is there, but the results have not shown up with it. We need to do things, not just say them. Canada Strong can no longer be a slogan, nor True North Strong and Free just a motto. We must put our people and our country first in everything that we do. Then and only then will Canada be autonomous and affordable, secure and self-reliant. To paraphrase Henley, we are the masters of our fate. We are the captains of our soul.